There's this thing called the Holy of Holies, and they had this giant curtain that they put up that they called the veil. And the Old Testament prophets and the priests needed to. There was one man that was allowed to go behind that curtain, and that was the Old Testament priests. And what they had to do was, over the course of the year, they had to follow a bunch of specific rules perfectly. One of the rules was like, if you were to walk into the temple, you needed to bathe 7 times before you go in. And if they didn't obey all those rules perfectly, they had a bell around their ankle and a rope tied around their ankle. And the reason that they did that was so that people could hear the bell, and if the bell stopped, they tug on the rope a few times, and if there was no response, then they got dragged out because they were dead. That is how incredibly pure our God is, and that is just crazy. But they had to keep this curtain in the temple to make sure that people, the sinners, didn't have to die when they came in the temple. Like, that's how incredibly powerful this God is. And there was also this thing called the Wailing Wall. I'm actually going to tell you guys about vision or a dream or whatever it is that you call it that I had while explaining this. But the Wailing Wall was something where it was a wall between the Holy of Holies and the common people. And what they would do is they would shove their prayers, they would write down their prayers on a piece of paper, and they would shove their prayers into the mortar of this wall. And they used to sit at this wall, rock back and forth, and pray. And I had this weird vision or dream or whatever, where I was sitting there, and I was rocking back and forth, and just trying to stay awake, to be honest with you. And eventually what happened was I fell asleep, and I had the prayer in my hand that I wanted to put in the mortar, and I woke up a little while later, and everyone left. Everyone was gone already, and there was this kind of this dimness, kind of a bluish tinge to everything. I don't know why everything turns blue. Anyway, so I went to push this prayer into the mortar, and then the wall exploded, and I got knocked back. And then I was just terrified, and I put my eyes to the ground, and I was so freaked out because I knew that God of the universe is right there. And the point of that whole vision was just simply to say, you don't have to go through those steps anymore to talk to God. You can talk to Him directly. But anyway, so in Matthew 24, this is where it gets exciting. Matthew 24, Matthew 24 verse, Matthew 24. All right, so listen to this. Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. And he answered them, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be one stone left upon another. All will be thrown down." So Jesus points out the temple, and he says, see that building? That's really impressive, isn't it? Not one stone is going to be left upon another. They're all going to be thrown down. That's crazy. I mean, the fact that Jesus said that. And in Mark 14, we see something else that's pretty incredible too. Okay, listen to this. Mark 14, verse 58. Okay. So this is the Pharisees talking when they're actually had Jesus arrested and they're trying to get him crucified. We heard him say, "I will destroy the temple that was made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands." So he was these Pharisees were trying to get him caught, and they were saying exactly what Jesus said. You know, you're going to tear down the temple and you're going to rebuild it with, you know, without human hands. That is just so incredibly powerful. Now, in Matthew 27, verse, let's see here. In verse 38, Matthew 27, verse 38, okay, now 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. And those who passed by derided him, meaning Jesus, saying, wagging their heads, and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." And the chief of priests and the scribes and the elders mocked him, saying, "He saved others, yet he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe him." So they started mocking him because he was saying that he was going to tear down the temple. But now there's something even more impressive. In verse, we're going to skip down to verse 45. Verse 45. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land and until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out in a loud voice, saying, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And the bystanders, hearing it, said, "This man is calling Elijah." And one of them at once ran and grabbed a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed to give to him to drink. But another said, "Wait, let's see whether Elijah comes to and save him or not." And Jesus cried out again and yielded up his spirit. This is the exciting part. This is where it gets awesome. This is where most people stop and then jump to his resurrection. But this is the cool part. "Behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split." Jesus destroyed the temple. Isn't that awesome? Jesus destroys the temple. And not only that, it says that the tombs were opened and the bodies of many saints who died were raised up. So God did exactly what he said he would do. He tore down the temple and rebuilt it, not with human hands. So, now is a point in the video where I'm going to say that you could pause it here and look up the Passion of the Christ, the temple scene, and just come back and keep watching the video. But now we're going to flip to Acts. I might be able to do this in one take. Yay! Acts 17, verse 24, okay? Okay. "God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man all the nations, all mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries of their dwelling place. And they should seek God, that perhaps they may feel their way toward him and find him, yet he is actually not far off from each one of them. In him we live and move and have our being. Even some of your own poets said, for we are indeed his offspring. Think about that. So God used to be in temples, but now what it's saying is the Spirit of God, the same Spirit of God that raised Christ from the dead, no longer lives in human temples, but it lives in us as Christians. That is incredible. So, the veil has been torn, and God no longer hides behind a veil, but he is in us as Christians. So yeah, thank you for watching the video.